In today's video, we're going to continue on and wrap up our series covering all 31 NHL teams, where we recap their 17-18 season and look ahead and discuss what we should expect from them in the offseason. Today's team is the Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. As I mentioned off the top, today we're discussing the 2017-18 Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals. What a season it was. I think from the beginning of the year, the Capitals didn't have quite the pressure on them that they did in years past, but they still had a fantastic year, and they finally came through, and Ovechkin got to lift that Stanley Cup for the first time, and he's been celebrating ever since. Watching Ovechkin celebrate and party with that Stanley Cup has been incredibly fun, and it's great to see him finally reach his ultimate goal here. Now let's jump in and first do a recap of their 17-18 regular season. Obviously, we know they won the Stanley Cup. They had a tremendous playoff run, but let's take a look at their regular season and what got them here, and then we'll take a look at what to expect from the offseason, because they're going to have a lot of things to take into consideration here and some tough decisions to make moving forward. Now, they finished the regular season with a record of 49-26-7 for 105 points, finishing first in the Metropolitan Division, which kind of went against what a lot of people thought. Coming into the regular season, a lot of people, including myself, predicted them to finish a little bit lower in the standings. I still had them making the playoffs, but I know some people even thought they might miss the playoffs. On paper, they did not look as solid and as deep as they did in years past, but yet, this group of guys got the job done, so it goes to show things aren't always as they appear. Even though a lot of people weren't picking them to win or finish first in the division, they proved everybody wrong yet again, finally broke through past the Penguins and got the job done. Now let's take a look here at some of their team stats for the regular season. They finished with 256 goals for, put them at 9th best in the NHL. Goals against, they allowed 236, which put them at 16th, so just right around the middle of the pack. Their power play, 22.5% on the power play, which was an excellent result, putting them at number 7 in the NHL, and their PK percentage was 80.3, putting them at 15th. So as you can see, you don't always have to be super high in the team stats to win the Stanley Cup. Their goals against and their PK were only average throughout the regular season. Now their goals for and their power play were above average, which kind of made up for that. But obviously, goes to show that, there's a lot of people think you have to have top 10 results in all those categories to be a true contender for the Cup, but they certainly proved that theory wrong this year. Now, face-offs, I'd like to take a look at the face-off percentage as well, because that's an indicator on how strong they are down the middle, which I think is very important. And obviously, when you're starting to play with the puck more often than not, it certainly makes your job and your life a little bit easier on the ice. They finished with a percentage of 50.4%, which is pretty decent for 13th best in the NHL. So as you can see, there's a lot of ways as a team they were only average through the regular year. Even though they got the job done with their offense, the rest of their team was only average at best. But you know what? Sometimes that's all it takes, and you get a great group of guys together, working together and for each other in the playoffs, and that's ultimately what got the job done here. Now let's take a look at some of the individual bright spot performances on this club. There was many of them. Ovechkin again leading the way with another Rocket Richard trophy, scoring 49 goals. The guy's an absolute scoring machine. Arguably the best, if not one of the best for sure, scorers of his all-time in his generation. Ovi, again, gets the job done with another big season for the Capitals. I was really impressed this year with Evgeny Kuznetsov in the regular season and in the playoffs. He really stepped up his game, playing more with Ovechkin than Backstrom has been. Some of that was due to Backstrom being hurt at times, but still they have some pretty good chemistry together, and Kuznetsov really stepped up here and really took his game up a notch this year. He put up 83 points, which was excellent. Backstrom had another solid year, putting up 71 points, a little bit down from previous years, but it's still a really solid result, and I know he was hurt a bit this year as well, so we won't give him a hard time over that. John Carlson was an absolute beast on the back end. Carlson put up 68 points, hit career highs in a lot of categories in a contract year, which is going to be a tough decision for them to get him signed here, but we'll get into that momentarily. I thought their goaltenders were pretty solid as well. You could argue that Philip Grubauer outplayed Holtby during the regular season, but obviously Holtby got the net back in the playoffs and was an absolute beast and got the job done to win the Stanley Cup. But there were times in the regular season where Holtby did not look like himself, and wasn't quite putting up the numbers that he normally does. But Grubauer, I thought, was excellent. He had a 15-10-3 record with a 2.35 and a 9.23. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Philip Grubauer here during the offseason discussion as well. Now, if you take a look at areas of the team that didn't go so well or were a little bit down this year, TJ Oshie didn't have a fantastic regular season, in my opinion, after getting that massive contract extension. Obviously, he had a great playoff, helped them win the Stanley Cup, so all will be forgiven, I'm sure. But his regular season numbers were not as good. He only had 47 points. He came off a mega year the year before, so his numbers were certainly down, but he did make up for it with some clutch play in the playoffs. Andrei Burakovsky is another player that's kind of struggling and somewhat disappointing, put up 12 goals. So, you know, they certainly would like to get more out of Burakovsky as well. And I already mentioned Holtby. We'll kind of put him under this category as well. He was not quite himself. He was not up to Holtby standards for chunks of the year. Finished with a goals against average of .299, which is not great for him. He can do much better than that, and a .907 save percentage. So, you know, could it be fatigue? Was he battling injuries we didn't know about? What was going on? Sometimes with goalies, it's a little bit psychological as well. Hard to say, but he got his game back for the playoffs when it mattered most, and they got the job done and hoisted Lord Stanley. So obviously, like I said, any of these not so bright areas can certainly be overlooked and forgiven since they got it done when it mattered the most. Now, jumping into the offseason stuff, this team has some incredibly difficult decisions to make. Obviously, we've already seen part of this. Now, I was going to do a dedicated video, but with everything that we're trying to do covering the draft and all these teams, when Barry Trotz resigned as head coach, I did want to do a dedicated video to discuss that a little further. I just didn't have the time, and we had this Washington Capitol video coming up here on the schedule, so I figured I would just kind of wait and discuss it all at one time. Obviously, Barry Trotz leaving the Capitals here is a really bad news. You know, he's been a great coach there for a long time. They got the Stanley Cup done, and now they're going to be going into, you know, obviously a new bench boss behind the bench here. More than likely, it's going to be Todd Gruden. That'd be my guess. But I think at the end of the day here, it kind of boiled down to Barry Trotz not getting the money he was looking for. He's been a long time, very successful NHL coach. And obviously there was a contract clause that we did not know about until after, that it said he would have a 2-year extension with a $300,000 raise. I believe he was making around $1.5 million, and it was going to be a $300,000 raise, I believe the numbers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but coaching salaries are not made as public as players, so it's some of that is speculation. I'm not sure if that's confirmed. Either way, it was a bit of a raise, but at the end of the day here, a lot of other big name coaches that have had a similar level of success. If you look at the ones that are in the top 5, like Mike Babcock, Joel Quenneville, etc., they're making significantly more money than that, and I think he really felt like he was being undervalued. This wasn't appreciated enough, and there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect between him and the GM McClellan. So I don't know, a combination of McClellan and him not getting along, not getting the pay raise he was really wanting and felt like he deserved, and it's hard to argue with him considering how long he's been an NHL coach, how much success he's had, and now winning the Stanley Cup. Obviously, the deal that he got with the Islanders, they really ponied up, is rumored to be a 5-year contract at $4 million per year. So that is a significant raise for Trotz. That's more than double what he was earning with the Capitals. So even though owner Ted Leonsis is not opposed to shelling out big money for their players, they don't seem to be too fond of paying big money for their coaches. Like if you look at their coaching history, outside of hiring Barry Trotz, most of their other coaches in the last 10-12 years have all been newer first-time coaches to the NHL, and obviously they would command lower salaries. So I don't know if there's a trend there, something to that. But anyways, we'll see what happens here. They could continue that trend, letting Todd Gruden take over the bench in Washington. So we'll see. But obviously, not great news. I know there's a lot of fans who were not happy. Shortly after the Stanley Cup celebration kind of starts to come to an end, and then all of a sudden the coach is gone. So we'll see what happens, what they decide to do. You got to remember, too, that Brian McClellan and Barry Trotz were hired at the same time. So normally the GM hires the coach. That was not the case here. At that point in time, both positions were vacant, and the owner looked after hiring both of these guys. So obviously McClellan didn't really have a say in hiring Trotz. They've worked together. They've coexisted. But there has been times when you could tell there's a little bit difference in philosophy, maybe some friction. Not sure what it is exactly. The two didn't seem to gel as well as they would, considering the amount of success that team has had. But obviously there were some issues there, and I guess they're moving on. So it's a very unfortunate for the Capitals, especially going to a division rival like the Islanders. Diving further into the offseason here, they've got some mega decisions to make. The big one's going to be John Carlson. Can they keep him? That back end is not going to be anywhere near the same without him. but they are going to be tight to the salary cap. Now, the new salary cap was recently confirmed to be $79.5 million. There had been speculation it could be upwards of 80 to 82, so I'm sure the Capitals are a team that were not thrilled with that number, hoping it would give them a little bit more wiggle room. Even that extra million or two can make a huge difference in whether or not they can keep their star defenseman here. So they're going to have to obviously really pony up the big bucks, because you know a lot of other teams are going to, but that could mean they might have to ship out some other money to make that happen. If you have the option as a Capitals fan of keeping John Carlson or re-signing him, but you had to lose maybe another significant player, what would your thoughts be on that, and who do you think the Capitals could possibly move out to make room for a Carlson contract? Now, outside of John Carlson, they do have some interesting UFAs, but nobody of too significance here. The most prominent one would be Jay Beagle, who's been there a long time. Obviously played a very solid bottom six role, fourth line center type guy. But with the amount of success he had in the playoffs, he probably will command more money than they probably would like to pay him. So it'll be interesting to see if they can retain him. Obviously, Alex Chason's another guy, as well as Michael Kempny and Jakub Jerabek. Now, Kempny played pretty decent. I think they'll probably be able to retain him without paying too much. Alex Chason's debatable. He did have one of the better seasons he's had lately in the playoffs. He was kind of in and out of the lineup a bit. Played more often than not, depending on injuries and whatnot. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him retain him on a 1 or 2 year deal. Obviously, he's bounced around a lot. He originally came in with the Dallas Stars, went to the Ottawa Senators in the Jason Spezza trade. Kind of got off to a decent start, but then couldn't keep it up. Fell out of favor in Ottawa, got shipped out to Calgary. Didn't really do the greatest in Calgary either. Got picked up by the Capitals, and he didn't have an awesome season, but he did better than he had been in the last while. So he certainly improved his play, so it'll be interesting to see if they keep him. Now, they have some RFAs that are going to need some raises as well, and you just have to hope that as much as they want to keep these guys, that they don't go too crazy with their contract demands. Like Devontae Smith-Pelly, DSP needs a new deal as an RFA. Certainly was a big role in helping them win the Stanley Cup, but his regular season numbers were not the greatest. I mean, he plays a different kind of role, so you don't expect big offensive numbers. However, if you take a look at the history and the fact, how he's bounced around, I don't really think he can demand too much over too long. Just because as much as he had a great year, he doesn't have the long-term proven track record, so I'm sure they're going to want to keep him. Hopefully they can work out something, maybe a 2-3 year deal at a very decent amount of money. The fact that really, at this point in his career, I would think DSP would be happy to have a one-way solid contract with a bit of a raise. Certainly deserves it. They had an awesome playoff. But sometimes you see guys get these mega deals after one small run, and at this point in time, I'm not sure he's earned that. He's certainly earned a new contract, a bit of a raise for sure, so we'll see what they can work out. Tom Wilson's an RFA as well. I'm sure he'll be qualified. I'm not sure exactly how the numbers are going to fall for Wilson, but I'm sure they can get that figured out. He plays a pivotal role for them. Obviously plays a lot on the top line with Ovechkin. Now, they've also got defenseman Madison Bowie and backup goalie Philip Grubauer. Now, there's a lot of speculation they might trade Grubauer. Now, I had speculated myself they should definitely look at trading a goalie. You might even want to take a look at trading Braden Holtby. Now, some of you guys out there might think I'm crazy for saying that, but at this point in time, he didn't have a great regular season, so there's that. He had an awesome playoff, so his value would never be higher right now. He's a Stanley Cup winning goalie. He's under contract for a couple more years, so whoever picked him up would have that reassurance at a very decent cap hit for a star goalie, mind you. So you have that going for you. You have a very solid prospect in Ilya Samsonov signed to an entry-level deal, going to be coming over to play in North America this year. He could make the Capitals roster. He's had an awesome career so far in the KHL, leading up to this point, preparing for his NHL debut. So really, they could probably get quite a haul for Holtby. I don't think it's going to happen. I can't imagine it would. I know sometimes teams hang on to players too long, and I think they should maybe sometimes consider trading when their value is at a higher level. But, I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that, and I know a lot of times teams do as well. Either way, I can definitely see them trading a goalie. More likely going to be Grubauer. There's going to be teams out there. There are teams now that need a goalie. There's the Islanders, there's the Hurricanes, just to name a couple. I would not be surprised to see Grubauer traded at the draft or shortly thereafter. Looking at some guys here that are eligible for contract extensions, they don't have too much to really get into this summer. They do have a few guys they could look at, but I think a lot of these guys could also wait and see what happens and look at them next year. You've got Kristen Juice, you've got Andre Burakovsky. Verana's another one. I mean, they had decent years. They're likely, they really could wait and see if they have a better season. I think it'd be in the players' best interest as well to kind of wait and see what happens. I don't see any extensions on the horizon for those guys for sure. I mean, there is speculation too. They could look to buy out defenseman Brooks Orpik, but I think that's kind of have to get an idea of what's going on with Carlson first. They have until June 30th to complete that buyout window, so we'll see what happens. Orpik may or may not be with the team next year, but if they're going to lose Carlson, they probably don't want to lose Orpik as well. They do need some experience back there. And Orpik did have a decent playoff, so it's tough to say He doesn't have a lot of time left on his contract, so if they do hang on to him, they won't have him on the roster too much longer anyhow, but that has been a move that's been speculated before, so we'll see what happens. So the Washington Capitals obviously have an interesting offseason here. Can they retain John Carlson? Are they going to trade a goalie? How is this team going to look like next year? They've already lost the head coach, so even though they're the Stanley Cup champions, it's probably fair to say that there is a good possibility that the roster could look a fair bit different come next season. So leave your comments down below. What do you expect the Capitals to do this offseason? Can they retain Carlson? Are they going to trade a goalie? What do you think is going to happen? Let me know down in the comments and we can discuss it further. Now, if you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So hit that subscribe button if you're new. Smash that like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.